Welcome back to the Fitness Podcast. It is your host of the day, Emily, and with me today I have Gurinder, who is a good friend and a coach in the online realm, maybe even not virtually when things open up. This is probably being released after lockdown has eased, but it is recorded 1 week prior opening. So we're quite excited here. Welcome, Gurinder, or should I call you G? I'll probably call you G.
G's good. It's easy. But yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me as well. How you keeping?
I'm well. I'm well.
Good,
Busy
good.
but well. Spring is around the corner. It lights up your
Yeah,
mood. Hopefully, I mean, it was snowing here yesterday.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I saw your story.
yeah, but it wasn't like a little snow that just melted. It actually lied on the ground until the evening. So
Right.
this is what I remember April should be like. So in a way, like
Okay.
obviously climate change is a real thing, but I feel like this has taken it back to where it used to be.
Right.
It should
See.
be a shit show in April. That's what I feel like.
Right. See, for me, it's like I've got memories of complete inconsistencies in April because my brother's birthday is in April. So I always kind of remember, like, I remember like 30-degree days, and I also remember 5-degree days. And like, today it's like 2 degrees. And it's like, I don't know. And it's like everywhere in between as well. So it's just one of those, I don't know what the hell it's supposed to be for England.
Yeah. So even
Yeah.
though I think we're all ready for like summer and heat and everything else, I don't know, at
Mm,
least for myself, I feel like when there is this kind of inconsistency and turmoil like this, it feels
mhm.
like, yeah, we're doing fine. Like the earth is like, she's okay kind of thing. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's how I feel. I feel like happy when it's like a bit up and down in April.
Right. Okay. Because that's more normal. That's what you've experienced.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And I don't feel like it has been for like many years, but I feel like this
Mhm.
year it's been really like that. So
Right. Okay.
yeah.
You're like, oh, the Earth is still fine.
Yeah, exactly. But please do your recycle, folks.
Yeah. Exactly. Don't forget none of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, don't become complacent just because the Earth is doing just fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually want to spin this into the fitness podcast,
Mhm.
and the first question we kind of ask people is, what does fitness mean to you, or how would you define fitness?
Yeah. Okay. I've thought about this a fair amount because the technical definitions of like fitness as it relates to the human body is just to be physically fit and healthy. And but that it just for me is like then I start to think about like biologically fitness is like your ability to survive your environment, and then also fitness is the idea of being up to and being able to fulfill a task or a role that you're being put forward to. And so then for me, the actual physical definition of fitness doesn't quite cut it, because as a human being, it's not just about being physically fit and healthy. It's about everything else that it comes with. Is like for us to be able to survive our environment, but also to be able to fulfill the roles and the tasks that are put forth in front of us, so that we can not so much like there's always that line of like rising to the challenge, but I like to think of it more like it's falling back on the level of skill that you actually have developed. So I think it's used by like Navy SEALs, or it's like pilots or something like that. I think it's more coming from pilots, where they say, if something goes wrong on a flight, it's like you don't want to rise to the challenge because that's not good enough. Then you're in unknown territory. You always want to fall back on what you already know about that high level of training that you received. So when it comes to us lot as as human beings, I feel like it's not just about being physically fit and healthy. It's about everything else that comes with that. So for me, physical fitness and health is going to be, coordination, endurance, strength, power, speed, all those different kinds of things. And um, you can get it to the level that is suitable for you, for whatever task you're trying to fulfill. Then it's more than that as well. It's like understanding how you're going to perform well, better and better and better as each day goes on and on and on. So incorporating sleep and nutrition, stress management techniques, and the biggest thing is like the older I get, the thing that I feel like affects your level of fitness the most is your mindset and how you handle things that are thrown at you. And so I feel like I try and encompass like um, a greater definition, or like a definition which is more fitting for actual human function rather than just what is physical physical health, what is physical fitness.
I love that. So adaptability,
resilience would go in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess flexibility in a way, because you need to be able to be flexible, to be adaptable, and you need to be resilient to the so really, really interesting. I mean, I kind of look at fitness the same way. And that's why, when you have a discussion with someone and they completely shut down when you mention the word fitness, it's because I think their definition of fitness is just whether or not they can go for a 5-minute jog or not, or if they even for some people, I guess they will associate fitness with what they look like. And yes, there is cause and effect to how you look is a byproduct of all the things that you do and don't do, but fitness is something that everyone has to their own level, and more importantly, can always be improved upon. So yeah,
absolutely. It's like, because everybody's going to have, I think that's a key point as well, because everybody's going to have their own version of what that is like, can I go for a jog for 5 minutes? Somebody else is like, can I lift 200 kilos? Another person is like, can I play with my kids? It's like, what's also relevant. So there's like, I guess you can think of it as like there's the sphere of fitness, and then where do people see themselves fitting into that, like what's important to them, because it's not going to be important for everyone to like develop their power, for example. It's just one of those things, and it's like I don't really care to do that kind of thing. So it's like finding out what they care about. Well, when it comes to the trainer-client relationship, is like find out what the client actually really cares about, and then just move towards that. And then they're like, okay, I'm fit in my own definition of it as well.
Yeah. And that's really hitting it on the nail, because I think fitness is a tool to improve your quality of life, or the quality of your goal or your desires, right? So for a lot of people, I think the people we work mostly with is, you want to improve the quality of their energies, how they move, lack of pain. Like, I know that you work with a lot of pain people, and and whereas we have other people, maybe like myself, I like to channel that fitness level, but I see it as a performance thing in when I'm at the arena and when I'm performing. I don't, of course, if my fitness level, if my general fitness level would have been poor, I would have felt it in my day-to-day life. So therefore it would have been the thing that I needed and wanted to improve. But I think once you've reached that level of fitness where your quality of life is good, that's where you start to look at fitness in another area of like performance, or achieving something that is kind of hard to work towards, and where I think progressions then become a lot smaller. It's like, because I think if you take someone who is completely sedentary and have the worst fitness levels in terms of cardiovascular health, and you improve that, if we go like percentage wise in the improvement of their quality of life, it's going to be huge. Whereas maybe for someone like me, who have a good base level of fitness, for me to start doing a little bit more conditioning, the percentage of improvement of my life won't be that great, right? So I don't even know, I'm spinning off here with a lot of thoughts, but
take it where it goes. It's exactly, because it's like, novices, you've got a lot of ground to make up. You start getting to that advanced level, is like the amount of effort you're putting into is for those incremental gains. It's like that the marginal return on it starts to decrease. But then I always find it's that interesting level is like, okay, you build that new baseline, and you just you can be like, I always find it's a couple of thoughts tied into it, but it's just basically you build that new baseline. You're like, okay, I'm really happy with my achievement, and it's like I can do things I couldn't do before. But then there's also the idea that if you're not expanding, you're going backwards. Is like, if you're not challenging yourself on some level, you're always kind of moving backwards a little bit, because go on.
Can I just put in, I think that's where we go back into the mental fitness, right? That's where you start to stretch the mind of how much can you achieve. Like, you're actually, instead of saying like, I need to change this because I'm moving away from pain, now it's like I'm challenging myself here, so that I can move towards pleasure of actually
Yeah.
seeing how far I can stretch myself.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right. So
absolutely.
there will be like a breaking point at somewhere. I don't know where it is, and it's going to be different for everyone, but it's really nice, right? When you come
Yeah.
away from pain and towards the pleasure.
Yeah, yeah, completely. It's like, you realize, whoa, this is what life can be like without suffering. In like you point out, I deal with people mostly lower back pain, and then taking them out of that, and then basically feeling like you can move freely in your body again and actually regain confidence in your body to be able to do the things you really want to do. And then so yeah, you get to that point and you're just like, whoa, okay, there's this stuff that I can actually do which I never even considered I could do before. So then it's like that, then you're looking at the next level up, and yeah, definitely moving more closer and closer towards that so-called heaven. And then so yeah, you realize you can do that, you realize that's achievable, so it opens up your mind to what else is possible. And then you start to set new goals for that. And yeah, so the idea that if you're not actually kind of expanding your horizons, if you're not actually moving forwards, you're kind of moving backwards. Because yeah, tying in with the mental fitness, it's that's what keeps us fit and healthy mentally as well. Because if we're not actually challenging ourselves, there's always, like, as human beings, we've got this circuit in our brain to keep driving us forward and looking for novelty and looking for challenge. But that can, if that goes missing, then we feel like we're living a pretty mediocre life. And then you can build up a low grade level of frustration. You just don't really know why you're upset with the world around you. And it's like, hey, it's probably because you're just not doing the things that you really want to do, or rather push yourself a little bit. If you start to push yourself a little bit, there's a lot of satisfaction that comes with that. So when you realize that, hey, I've built this new baseline, but there's something else out there as well, I can go a little bit further, let me just challenge the next thing. And then you get there, you're like, whoa, there's another level here. And then you can keep going. It's a really fascinating journey, even though the gains become more and more incremental, it's a lot smaller. But it's still very rewarding to keep going on that path, right?
Yeah. So I want to kind of do a little turn here and just ask you, because you and I have kind of a little bit different schools of training in our past anyway.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah, quite
coming,
different, I'd say. Yeah.
I'm more from like the bodybuilding, beasting the shit out of myself, trying to
Yeah.
be as strong as I possibly can. I mean, earlier days to the detriment of my lower back and
Right.
joints aching. Right. I would gladly announce that I don't really have that sort of mindset anymore. I still enjoy the bringing out the she beast inside of me when I'm about to do a lift. Like I really enjoy that feeling. So
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
probably
yeah.
something that's always going to be a part of me. But I've opened up my world of what exercise means. Because I used to be like, cool, if it's not deadlifts, bench, and squat, it's not exercise kind of thing. And like obviously the accessory work. And now, and I think especially with the social media and Instagram, and you can follow all these crazy skilled people that just have a skill set that is completely different from you, and they're still both exercise and fitness related, right? So I want to talk more about like what you like, where did you start and where are you today, and like why did you turn up to be like what you do today predominantly?
Yeah. It's start from the day I was born. No,
Yeah,
it's like
it
it
was a
goes
perfect
back.
spot.
Yeah, exactly. The perfect squat. It was. Well, I've never always been involved in the fitness industry. So I used to be a tax analyst, right? So I used to work in corporate, and then basically at the end of 2010, I left that, and then at the beginning of 2012, I got into the fitness industry, because it was just like, okay, I could do this work. I was intellectually stimulated, work with great people, and I had a good career path and everything set out. But there was just that key thing that was missing, which is I don't feel like I have a purpose here, right? I don't feel like I'm doing anything that really speaks out to me. And then when I figured that out, it was like, oh, okay, I think I could teach people. So when I started going on it, when I started getting into the fitness industry, and I was started getting on the gym floor, talking to people, like, started right at the bottom rung, like fitness coach, cleaning the kit up and everything, and making sure the gym members and everybody is fine. I was surrounded by a variety of trainers in this commercial gym, where some of them were just like, usual go hard or go home, and others were just going to smash you with like, HIIT workouts, and others were like pure rehab, and then there was like people in between. So then I just went, oh wow, there's a variety of exercise here. There's a variety of ways of being. And my natural inclination has always been to, I suppose, look at fundamentals first. It's like, what I realized this, I was able to articulate this later down the line, which was, I just want to know what it is to function well as a human being. What is it to be a good quality human being? And so for me, it just came down to basic principles: movement, mobility, function, stability. How do you actually move well and efficiently as a human being? And when I realized that, that's the path I started to go down, because also from like a personal level, I picked up an innocuous injury. I think I was like 26 at the time. I got a strain in my psoas, and I was like, how the hell did I do that? It didn't even happen from anything that, it's not like I went for a crazy squat or anything like that. And then I just took.
Who don't know where the psoas is.
Yes. Sorry. So one of the hip flexor muscles, or like, core stabilizing muscles. So it's basically, it's in the lower, it starts in the lower back and it goes down into the inside of the thigh. So it's this like long fillet of muscle. And so it's quite important for helping you stabilize your back, but so that you can make movements without irritating and compressing the spine, but also so it's also mostly involved actually in stabilizing the back. Everybody thinks it's just involved in hip flexion, but the biggest thing it does is actually help stabilize the back for good core stability, so that you can make good quality hip flexion. And so I injured that area. And I was like, why the hell has that happened? I'm supposed to be strong, young, fit, and healthy. And then I had my eyes opened up by a chiropractor I used to work with, and he just blew my mind a little bit. It's like, yeah, you don't have good core stability. I was like, what are you talking about? Yes, I do.
Abs, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm lean, I'm strong. It's like, nah, you're not. You messed up.
Don't
I was
fool
like,
yourself.
shit. Yeah, exactly. Don't fool yourself. So, so then that just kind of made me, I actually went a bit pretty extreme with it. I was like, all right, I'm just not going to train. I'm going to figure out what these basics are. I didn't train for like 3 years. Lift a weight. I was just like, I was so hell bent on trying to figure out why that could have even been an issue. And then it's also, you kind of fall into that trap of the cycle as well. It's just easy. You get into the habit of not training as well. So there's a bit of that, but then eventually I was like, no, I need to get back into things, because I feel like I've built myself back up to a level where I can handle it, and
just to put
without screwing myself up. Yeah.
Everyone who hasn't been exercising during 2020, get yourself a gym membership and actually start moving, or at least move out in the park, right? So yeah. Sorry, I digressed it here, but it is easy to fall into the trap. I did when I was in lockdown, and it was shocking to fall into the non-movement trap when I was identifying myself as a active person. So sorry, continue.
Well, because we're creatures of habit, right? So if the habit, the habit is to not do anything, it becomes very easy to do that. And I've noticed that myself as well. Is like, when there's momentum, I'm killing it. If that momentum stops, I have to make sure that I recognize that, and then push myself back into the healthy behaviors that I've established. And then so I just spent the longest time trying to figure out like the function of stuff. So we're coming at it from two different ends. Mine was like very, very softly try and understand how the body works, only do things within your capacity, and build from there. And then developing that baseline over a number of years, being like, okay, well, I need to incorporate this into, I like doing jiu-jitsu, I like doing wrestling, and lifting weights, like throwing around some kettlebells and stuff like that. So it's okay, well, I need to make sure I can incorporate it into that as well, because you can't just stay here. Like no one's good here. You need to build extra strength. You need to build some resiliency, to the extent where if you're pushed like potentially beyond your threshold, you have a lot more capacity. Like, well, first of all, your threshold is a lot higher to handle abuse. So then that means, you're less chance of getting injured, for example. So it was like, okay, well, I need to make sure I'm building that capacity. And I feel like, our two worlds are kind of merging in that sense, where I'm coming from that end, and like someone like yourself is coming from the other end of like always purely beasting it. And I'm like, no, I need to take the two worlds and make them collide.
Yeah. You know, I've been because I've done my biomechanics courses, and like I've done all of those courses. So like, and I think when I did those, it opened for me as like, all right, I understand the physics of the body in a whole different way. It's not just putting up, taking up a weight and doing something. It's like everything has purpose and meaning, and how you do it matters so much more than what you do. Like, you know, but even to this day, I must say I have poor mechanics, and I have my own blind spots and weaknesses, and I work with a coach to work on those. And a lot of the time, which is hard, which is, by the way, if you who listen have not been training for a very long time, you're lucky that you can go and learn something. It's a lot harder to relearn something that you've, I mean, thousands and thousands of reps of something, and all of a sudden you realize that, oh, it wasn't quite perfect, or it wasn't serving you in how you did it, and look at you now. So but it's so fascinating to go in, and I think that's the thing, the more you get into the whole thing of movement, you become more curious about, I think, your own body as well. And then I mean, I just realized that and no one is the same. Like, this is why, like, in one program, it could be one program for everyone, it just wouldn't look the same for everyone either, if you actually look at the individual. So, but look, I've seen some crazy things on your Instagram where you do, like, I don't even know what you would call it, some like body weight voodoo, like like
that's
I don't
a good
even
name
know.
for it.
Yeah, like I mean, I wouldn't even want to try and do it, and I don't even know how we're going to try and explain for the listeners what you actually do. But basically, you squat down on one leg and you have another leg straight, and then you manage to like wiggle yourself around, and I don't even know what is it called.
So that it's called the dragonfly squat. As least I'm pretty sure it's called dragonfly squat. I just saw somebody else who's got a way crazier version of it doing it, because a friend of mine was like, okay, kind of like, you're the mobility guy, you let me see if you can do this. I was like, I can't, but I'll try. Right? I've never tried it before, but it's just essentially it's a single leg squat where, say, if I'm going into a single leg squat or down on my left leg, then my right leg actually comes back behind me, and then I try and straighten it out so it points in front of me from behind my left leg. So yeah, it's a heck of a mobility, stability, coordination challenge, and especially when you get down into the bottom of that single leg squat, you're in that hole. It's like, okay, how am I going to get back up? Am I going to get
I
out
know
of this?
how I would do it. I would just like
keel over to the side,
shift to the side and just roll over. That's
Well, so this is the wild thing. This is the wild thing, right? The thing that I saw, like, the guy, he does that, but then he touches his shoulder down on the side and comes back up from this. So basically like an oblique crunch down to the floor, back up again, and then squats himself back up. And I was like, what? All right, well, yeah, I'll try it at least.
How many goes?
I mean, I've never every time I've put my shoulders start to bring it down, I've stayed there. I ain't coming back up from there. Yeah, that's like that's another wild level of strength that is required. But yeah, it's just like these are like, I mean, the interesting challenges, because it's just fun. It's fun to do because it's making fitness fun as well, because I'll do that. And I remember when I was starting it, I would like just do it for half an hour, and I was like, oh, this is really, really difficult. And I can barely do it. I couldn't even do it on my right side when I started, because I've got like some like old injuries that I'm always like kind of working with to sort out on that right side. And then my left side was, okay, that's a lot smoother, but then I can't get back off the ground. And but it was nice to do that and then be like, okay, here's another thing that, you just do a little bit each time and then you can get better at. So yeah, it's just these kinds of like mobility challenges. But for me, it's like it's like coordination is a huge one. When you learn how to coordinate, you have a lot more access to different kinds of movements, right? It's like your brain has more capacity to understand different kinds of movements, so it readily receives them. So that's one of those things, which is that's a wild movement, but your brain goes, yeah, okay, I've done something crazy. I can handle other crazy things you've thrown at me, and yeah, and so it makes things interesting, makes things fun. It's a different kind of challenge where you're kind of doing exercise without really thinking about doing exercise as well, which is also pretty cool about it. And
Can I
yeah.
ask you something then? Because you tapped onto a subject which is kind of interesting, I think, which is your cognition, right? Plays a huge role in your capacity of actually executing something.
Yeah.
And how do you teach that, if you do teach that? Like, how do you explain that to your clients who might be really new, that might be in pain or no pain? How do you address that part of the learning curve? Because it's a learning curve, and it's an acceptance of that you have a starting point. And sometimes, and I think this is where a lot of people are, where I definitely were, in terms of, I know I can get up and lift 100 kilos, but how I lift those 100 kilos might be the worst idea ever in terms of putting myself on strain. So not necessarily the greatest example, but like, how do you program someone to start with the like cognitive side of it, and then moving them into that skill acquisition that is needed? Because there will be that level at some point where it is a cognitive thing that holds you back before you can have the strength and the movement patterns, right?
Right. So when you're saying the cognitive thing, because where my mind is going to is like, initially it sounded like the way you described it, like the cognitive thing and then the physical thing is like, the cognitive thing is holding you back. Is it more like what somebody believes that he can do is what you're thinking, or is it just that brain body feedback you're talking about?
I mean, limiting beliefs definitely is a real thing. Like, if you don't believe that it's possible for you to perform something, then you will not be able to perform it, even though you have the range of motion and the actual strength to do something. If you don't have the belief that you can perform it, then you won't be able to perform. But I'm thinking, okay, maybe it is the mind, let's call it the mind muscle connection, or the coordination. Like, cognition and coordination might be the same thing, because it happens in your nervous system, right? So how do you actually, do you look at that at all?
Yeah, like because essentially it's like that constant sensory motor feedback. So sensory input, i.e. whatever your body is telling your brain, it goes into the brain, and then the brain translates that information and then tells and produces motor output, tells the body what to do with that information. So so in my case, there's people who, like, if you've had injury, then basically that feedback loop is disordered in some way. It's disorganized in some way, especially if you've had a long-term injury as well. So those motor maps in the brain, which are basically they're blurred. It's like the map that kind of like maps onto good movement, and then if you've lost that, then there's a bit of a blur. So the brain doesn't really understand what the body is telling it, and then it sends out an abhorrent signal, and therefore you produce a compensatory pattern so that your body doesn't move as well as it could do. And really, there could be several ways to address it, but when it comes to movement, it's about just getting the movement right. So say if it is a deadlift, like the example that you gave, then, from the ground up is like, okay, ball of the big toe, ball of the pinky toe, the heel, you've got that tripod of contact with the ground to make sure that all of the muscles in your lower extremity are going to fire up. And then because the body doesn't work in isolation like that, it will start to send the signal how to do the rest of the chain, go up the rest of the chain. So then the hamstrings are kick in properly, and then working with the hip hinge and making sure that the joints are aligned as correctly as possible, so that the muscles around the joints are all firing up and pulling the weight the way they're supposed to. So essentially that kind of body brain connection is going to be developed through primarily the movement skill acquisition, and then building that with understanding why it's important to do that. So there's that little bit of education around it as well, because like you say, you could just lift up 100 kilos off the floor and do it however the hell you want, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good for you long term. And so the idea is to do it as well as possible, create that stronger connection with that kind of patterning between brain and body, and then develop an understanding and an awareness of why you're actually doing that, and so that it makes it stick more. And there's other, like there's more to it as well. There's like the biggest part is get the movement right, but then there's also focus, attention, deliberate action, the kinds of things you're talking about, right? Is like where your mind is at with the movement, because your thoughts will influence how well you can execute something. Just like you said, even if you've got good quality movement, even if you're mobile as hell, you're strong as hell, but if you don't believe you can do the thing, you're not going to do it, even if it is within your capacity. So it's kind of it's addressing that piece of it as well, is a part of it too, but it's mostly going to come from doing the movement well, especially to begin with. And then, the person builds up the confidence that way. Is, oh, I can do this, I can do it well, and get a sense of in their body of when it's going well, when it's not going so well, and then they feel that difference. And then you're like, okay, that's why I want to do it this way, better and better and better. But that also requires like an explicit coaching as well. It's like, okay, tell me what it feels like on your so-called good side. Tell me what it feels like on your bad side when you're doing a unilateral exercise, like, one side versus the other, say a lunge. And then they're like, oh yeah, that felt a little bit more connected. I felt stronger. Oh, this side, I felt like I was a little bit more all over the place. Okay, great. So we want to equalize that a little bit, we want to reduce that asymmetry. And so they start to understand, because they felt it in their body, but they've had to have it explicitly made aware to them, like this is the issue, and go from there. So start with good quality movement, and then make them see how, like mentally how it affects them, and also give them a little bit of education around why it's important to do that, so that you can develop better capacity in your body.
Yeah, and I think just another thing that, and this is so applicable to myself, because I have had, or I still have, compensation between my two sides on my lower body. And this is why I work with someone to work on that, because what I do is I go back to my default thing, which is the compensation.
Yeah.
So I don't, and he's so funny. I'm like an analyst. I just overanalyze everything, and I overthink everything. And when I start to think too much, I just start doing wrong things. So this is why, like, I go to someone to help me take away that thinking, because when I think, I start to do my weird stuff. So I now have to put myself in someone else's hand and trust that this person knows what he's doing, and he's brilliant.
Awesome.
And but another thing with that is how you prime, like how you need to prime your what is your nervous system that we're priming. How, like, I did a leg press yesterday, and he wanted me to warm up with, he would have put on 100 kilos for my single leg deadlift straight away, like a decline leg press, and he wanted to put it on, and I could feel myself seize up inside, and I couldn't do it. It was like, it was a lock in my brain to perform something. And we took a plate off to do my warm up, and I did it, and I was like calming down, I was relaxing into it. And then by the end of it, I think we were up and doing like 170 kilos or something.
Wow.
And I couldn't have, like, I honestly, the first one, when he put on 4 plates, 25 plates, it felt like it was the heaviest thing, and I just seized up in my hip, I could feel myself seizing up. So the priming to get me to be able to perform later on, it was like this journey of like addressing my nervous system, essentially, of you are safe to do this kind of thing. And I found it, because it was so interesting, and I was like, I can't do this. And then like 4 sets later, I was pressing 170 on one leg, and it was kind of like, it blew my mind. I was like, wow, 10-15 minutes ago, I just that would have been impossible. Yeah.
It's very cool. It's like, I remember I had a client as well, like, because I do like, I show them a lot of body weight stuff as well. Again, like animal flow type of movements, and so that they can, essentially, really build confidence in their body. It's like, oh, I can do these crazy movements that I've seen other people do. And I remember one of my clients, I showed him a move, and then he just went, "You're never going to be able to make me do that." And I was like, "Just try it." He's like, "I'm just never going to be able to do that." I was like, "Fine." Half an hour later, he's doing the movement, right? And he was just super stoked that he could do it, because he was like, he's this tall 6'4" guy, and he's like, "This looks like it's supposed to be done by somebody who's a lot smaller than me." He's like, "No, you can do this," and it is amazing. And then when they do that, it's like, "All right, well, what else can I do? Give it to me." And I think, you touched on something interesting there as well. Is like, you start to think a lot about the exercise process. Because of the compensation and stuff. That's quite important, because the idea of cognitive load. So if you're going into training with a lot on your mind, your performance capacity goes down, right? Because you're thinking about so many other things. Yeah, and you just can't process the training that you're about to do. So you want to be able to remove that cognitive load. You've done that by getting a coach, but then there's, it could be a mental approach on your way to the gym as well, right? For like everyday users, it could just be like, okay, well, what's on your mind? It's like, all right, park it, maybe write about it, journal it or something, so you don't have to bring it into the gym with you. And then you'll notice that you can perform a lot better, because without that, you're just, it's kind of like, yeah, you're running into a wall every single time, when that wall doesn't even have to be there.
Yeah, and I mean, this is such an important thing to talk about, because I mean, and I really felt that yesterday, and I said that to my coach. I said, I have so little tolerance to stress right now. And obviously,
Right.
when you train, it's just, you put stress on your body and you're demanding something of it. And I could feel how much less tolerated I was to put more stress on my body. And that's because I've been literally had no boundaries in terms of when I stop working and when I start working. So it's kind of become this like 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. over Easter it's just, I've been a bit of a twat to myself, and I do apologize to myself dearly. And
Yeah,
I'll try and make
and regularly.
daily, I'll start apologizing.
Yeah.
No, but that is the thing. And I think what I need to realize here is, your capacity to add stress in terms of physical exercise and expect yourself of performing, it needs to be looked upon as what is going on in your life and how well are you managing all the other stresses.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so what are you doing in terms of recovery? Like, how do you make sure that your allostatic stress load, all the stresses upon you, is managed so that you can be a high performer all the time? If you are high, I think you are. I think you're like, you have like the Green Lantern sign
Yeah,
on your
it's like,
t-shirt. Now he's got a
bring
sick
that up. Yeah,
logo that I'm just so jealous about, and I wish I had a name that
there
could,
we go.
yeah. So if you
I
can
can allow for it.
then
Yeah, for anybody who's watching, it says GSC, so Gurinder Sandhu Coaching. So it just lent itself to a sick logo, which kind of looks like Iron Man's arc reactor core right in the middle here. And I was like, hey, that's cool. I'll deal with that.
I called him the Green Lantern, but I mean, same,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Still a superhero. It's all good.
But what do you do? And do you put a lot of importance to this in your life? Because I know that I usually do, but I've fallen into this vicious cycle of putting myself last and demanding more than I actually am capable of handling, which
Yeah.
it's only leading in the wrong direction, by the way. Which is why I'm at a spa for my birthday next week, by the way. But
Nice.
yeah. So what do you do? How do you do it? How do you catch yourself when you're going in the wrong direction? Like, what is your process of self-care, essentially, or high performance self-care?
Yeah, no, it's like it's a good question. It entails quite a lot of different things. So for me, first of all, is like a routine. So routine is actually quite helpful. Um, if I'm doing certain things on a day-to-day basis, I know I'm going to have a good day, like first of all. And then you were talking about no boundaries with when you finish work and when your recovery actually starts, and therefore recovery sucks. For me, is like, okay, I've got to make a clear demarcation between work and rest time. Like work and going to bed is a big one. So if I do have to, like, it's the nature of working for yourself, is like we will work whenever we feel like it, right? It's like, it's not like you have set hours for it. So I want to make sure that I'm not going to make myself suffer, so that the next day I don't have as much energy to dedicate to it. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of things, but so if we tackle that line first, is just, okay, making that clear demarcation between work and recovery. So what I'll do is I'm just making sure that, because everything's online now as well, and I'm staying online. I've had a good time doing work online as well, so it's like I'm going to keep on building on that. Essentially, it's just it's the only way for us to really make our line of business anti-fragile as well. Like if anything like this happens again, there's a precedent set now. We got to make sure that we can continue functioning. So the thing that I'm doing is, if it's a particularly intense day, then the process that I go through is, okay, stop work, and I'll just stop looking at a screen, and I'll just put on some mellow music, and then I'll do some of my like physical active recovery stuff. So whatever I feel like I need to work on my body in that moment, I'll start working on it. And so it gets me out of my head a little bit, which has been super focused, and I'm not looking at anything like constricting my vision, which with something that's straight in front of me, and I'm just working on my body. And like I said, I've had like 3 fractures on the right side of my lower leg. So there's stuff that I'm like working on to help alleviate strain and everything function better. So I'll just work with that. Then I'll just check in with myself a little bit as well, as, okay, one of the first things to go is kind of good quality breathing. So if you're stressed, you can start to hyperventilate a little bit. You might not necessarily breathe in through the lower rib cage and the abdominals, and you start to chest breathe a lot more. So I'm like, okay, how's that feeling? And then I will start to slow down my breathing rate, and then also try to breathe into my ribs and into my abdominals as well, so that it helps induce a calm state as well. And then I've got low lighting going on as well. If it's evening and you've been working late, it's like, okay, well, I need to set the lights down real low. So I've got like a Himalayan salt lamp, nice red hue, right, reddish pinkish hue to the light. So it's low lighting. I'm listening to an ambient relaxation music playlist. I'm checking in with my body. I'm doing that kind of stuff. So then when I do go to bed, I can tell mentally I'm not revved up. I've just really knocked down the RPMs, and I'm just in this chill zone. Whereas the times where I haven't done that, I've noticed I'm going to bed and I'm in bed and I'm trying to calm myself down to have a good night's sleep. And it's just not as happening. It's like, I find it pretty easy to sleep, but the quality of the sleep is what takes a hit. So it just doesn't end up being that good. I'll tend to wake up more in the middle of the night than if I do those kinds of routines, for example. So that's what happens, is just if there's like, okay, there's a clear intense period and I need to make sure that I'm going to get a good night sleep, because first and foremost, sleep is the ultimate recovery tool that you have. So you get that right, then everything feels golden. You wake up the next day, you're like, I'm ready to take on the world, kind of thing. And so that what happens. But and that's what I do. Otherwise, it's just like, having more of a routine. Like, what am I doing when I wake up? What am I doing between these hours? Where do I bake in that chill time? And that really helps me.
Yeah. I mean, I usually don't have any problem falling asleep. Like, my latency from hitting the bed to sleep is usually within like 2 minutes. Like,
yeah.
But I've found myself the last couple of nights literally
Yeah.
after thought, and I'm like, oh my god, you're just thinking too much, just breathe. And then you start thinking about breathing, I'm like, oh my god, and then my thoughts just go away again. I'm like, you're clearly doing this wrong. And you know what I did yesterday? I'm like, I did the same thing, but I went to bed earlier, but I just didn't have a relaxation period. And I was like, yeah, but if I go to bed earlier, then at least if it takes me an hour to go to bed,
Yeah.
I could still get another hour of
Yeah.
sleep. But I mean, it made a little bit of a difference, but I mean, the quality of sleep,
Yeah.
the duration of sleep doesn't determine the quality of your sleep. I mean, it definitely improves if you can only get the duration and not the quality. At least you get the duration, but quality is so important. So it really
Yeah.
is. It's like anything, if you are about to go to the gym and do a heavy session, you need to prime yourself up. Like, you need to rev yourself up to be able
Yep.
to go into that session. The same thing really applies to going to sleep. Like, you need to prime yourself to go to sleep. And but it's so fascinating to me that the easiest thing to do is the hardest thing to actually execute.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just is that's a wonderful way of putting it. It's like, oh, I mean, if it's that easy, it can't be, it can't mean something. But I think it's a bit of a time commitment as well. It's interesting as well, because I always I fight with the idea a little bit as well, because of the nature of our environment that we've created for ourselves, right? Everything is always on, everything is like pure stimulus. And even down to the way we chill out, right? Like, Netflix and chill it's passive recovery. But the thing about it is it's not going to do the job, because the part of the brain that is actually trying to switch off is actually getting stimulation from the brightness of the screen, but also the whatever's changing on the screen as well. So you're actually, even though you feel like, okay, I'm winding down, but your brain is still active on a level which is too active to induce sleep. So that's why you don't want to be looking at screens. That's another reason, is like everybody talks about bright light and blue light, but another reason is because it keeps, even though you feel like you're chilling out, it still keeps a part of your brain active, which is needed to start to zone out so you can get good quality sleep. And so it's kind of like, why are we putting effort into something which we do so naturally? Is because we've created this environment where we have to now, right? So it is easy to do, to the extent that you just need to spend, like, maybe it could even be just 20 minutes, buffering between the high stimulus thing that you're doing to going to sleep. Ideally a little bit more, especially if you're not so skilled at winding down. You're going to need more time, but the better and better you get it, you need less and less time to be able to do it. But I think that might be part of it. As part of the explanation is just we've got this environment where it's always constantly on, and something that we do so naturally as go to sleep, we have to prime ourselves for that. Is like, okay, great. But yeah, that's the way life is right now. We've got to deal with that. We've got to actually dedicate some time to getting some good quality sleep, and with that so-called sleep hygiene.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the endless quest, I think, and it is the first thing that goes when you are maybe putting a little bit too much stress on yourself, in terms of all stresses. Again, I find, at least for myself, it's the first thing that I start to neglect.
Yeah, because I guess what is the idea that you've got more to do, so where can you pull that time from? Oh, okay, I can just afford to sleep less.
But we also know that the level of your creativity and effectiveness actually goes down when you don't sleep. So you're actually not, I know I'm not doing myself a favor. So, yeah. But here is a question for you, which I also asked my previous guests. What do you want to be remembered as?
What do we want to be remembered as? The Green Lantern, Iron Man. No, yeah. I thought you were going to say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like, yeah, still, exactly. Yeah, still growing up. What do I be remembered as? I don't know. I guess, well, yeah, first of all, it made me think of like society at large, but then it's also, that's a bit grandiose. And then it made me also think like, well, what do I want to be remembered by? Like, family and friends and stuff like that. I don't know. I've never actually, I've not really thought about that, but I guess, I don't know, just a good dude, just a man who is trying hard to live a good life and help others do the same.
So
Yeah.
if you were to die and I came to your funeral, you were like, he was a good dude.
Yeah.
You know what? That's my ambition too. I just want to be
Yeah.
remembered as someone who was kind, caring,
Mm.
showed up for others, and just had good intentions. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like, what kind of impact do you want to leave? Well, first of all, I guess it's like, would you want it so that loads of people show up at your funeral to sing your praises, or no one shows up and just, doesn't care that you're gone? But then I guess loads of people could show up at your funeral and just to speak shit about you. Nah, that's not going to happen. But yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. Is like just have yeah. I think I'm just trying. Yeah, it's interesting. It really pulled me out of like how I view what I'm doing, because like what would it look like to others is interesting, because I'm quite like insular in my focus with it. Is like I'm just so interested and curious about what it is to achieve human potential, that I just kind of go down that route regardless of what anybody else is thinking about it, and what potentially regardless of what other people think about me doing that as well, which is kind of what happened, because I had a career that was pretty set and then I just left it, and everybody's like, oh, you're so brave for doing it. I was like, really? I'm just doing what I want to do. It's like it didn't feel like it was a brave choice. But so it's just been about like my journey on it, and how what I learn is useful for other people, and then imparting that knowledge. So I guess to extend that out even further to beyond my clients, to the people that I know, is just okay. Yeah, he was doing something useful. He was useful. He was a good person who was who had something which helped other people. I think that'd be essentially the way to sum it up.
yeah, and I think it kind of goes. It's a similar thing as to if you were to try and go through a transformation journey. You know, your impact on the greater goal comes from your focus on what's in your immediate future, right? So the way
Mm,
that I look
mm,
at, like, I of course also want to have a huge impact in the world, but I know that I can only do so by focusing on who I ever have encounter in the moment.
yes.
Because if I can have a good impact on this person, then that person will probably go and have a better impact on someone else. Like, I think
Yeah.
as a
100%.
society, that's all we can do. Instead of thinking I need to have X do X, it's like if I can focus on the details of what's in front of me and
Hmm.
just try and be the best I can in that, and
Yeah.
for other people, like, you have a bigger impact. Which,
Hmm.
you know, people talk about legacy,
Yeah.
and I think it's also to have grandiose goals, and I think everyone in one way or another has a form of grandiose goal, even though you don't
Yes.
really want to admit it to anyone or yourself. But
Mm.
I think the whole legacy thing really comes down to how are you going to be remembered, as like, how
Hmm.
did you make other people feel?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's yeah, legacy thing. I almost feel like. Do you remember the movie The Insider? Al Pacino and Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
Is like there was the character who was the presenter for the 60 Minutes program that they were doing, and basically he flip flopped on Al Pacino. So he was loyal to him, then he wasn't loyal to him, then he went back and he was like, yeah, actually you were right. And then he started thinking about his legacy, because he was like 70, and he was talking about, you start thinking about your legacy. What are you going to leave the world with? Is like, is this the memory that they're going to have of me, that I brought down this corporation by sticking my guns with you? He's like, no, I don't want to be remembered for that. I feel like it's one of those things where I won't really get a handle on what I want my legacy to be until I get to the elder years as well. It's like I'm thinking about it now, because to the extent that I want to be able to move well now, so that I can still move well when I'm like 75, 80 years old, and still feel like young in my body as best as possible. But in terms of actually the legacy you leave, I feel like that really starts to crystallize when you get older, because just the appreciation is there. You realize you just don't have as much time left, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
um it was a pleasure to have you on here. Can you just tell everyone where they can find you, and we go from there?
Yeah, sure. No, appreciate you inviting me on. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, so Instagram is G Sandhu Coach. So it's GSANDHU Coach. And That's where you can find me. And also, you've been on our podcast as well. So we have that podcast, and that's Evolve, Achieve, Thrive. So that's the same handle as the name. So at Evolve, Achieve, Thrive on Instagram. What was that?
I highly recommend your podcast. It's a very good one. So
No, I
it's always
appreciate
a pleasure to listen into it. So I really highly recommend, if you guys have more time to give than just the
Yeah.
podcast, go and check it out.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was great. It's like when we had you on as well. We're definitely having you back as well. As we're gonna have some interesting stuff to talk about. Actually, already got a topic that we want to talk about with you as well, so that could be fun. So check out the podcast and check me out on Instagram there as well. And feel free to reach out if you got any questions about the kinds of things we discussed today, or how might be able to help. Then I'm happy to receive.
Yeah, awesome. Well, until next time, guys, thank you for listening in. Always appreciate your feedback and comments. So you know where to find us.
Yeah.